That's surely not true. I mean, I go outside all the time and I'm seeing people wearing masks. I'm seeing a lot more uptake of masks in the most recent weeks because I think they're a lot more easily available than they were before. And I think, people have got the message somehow that they protect against the disease or they protect other people. I think, what's interesting is that the evidence is actually quite weak around this. Certainly what the government has published. It's most recently on June the 23rd, it put out advice for workplaces, how to protect customers. And it said, the value of masks is pretty low. Now, I have no problem with people wearing a mask. I wear a mask myself sometimes. But I don't think that it should be compulsory, especially when the evidence is not particularly strong.
Bharat, let's hear from a doctor. Bharat, what do you make of that? The evidence is not particularly strong that masks actually help.
Well, look, whilst the masks may not be 100% protective, we have to think this from first principles. So the infecting dose comes from droplets released from somebody's mouth if they are infectious. And when you cannot avoid your social distancing from them on the crowded bus, on the crowded train, in the crowded supermarket restaurant, you have to have an additional mitigating measure, such as a face covering, to reduce the number of droplets. You do not reduce it absolutely, but by reducing it, you hope that you will also reduce the infecting dose. And then we have one more piece of evidence coming from the WHO, which people like myself have always felt was relevant and important, which is there may be also an element of aerosol transmission. So in the midst of a confined environment, aerosol transmission, as well as droplet transmission, as well as too many human beings.
Right, should we be forced or encouraged to wear a mask?
Well, we need to have strong messages, and the United Kingdom has got a lot of deaths. We need to bring this down. We don't want a single extra death. We need to do everything we can. So in that context of the United Kingdom has had too many deaths, we need to do all we can. And one strong message is indoors, in places where there are too many human beings, you will compulsory wear a mask.
OK, so Fraser, well, what's the problem with that, Fraser? In confined spaces, we really should be wearing masks.
Well, I agree we need a strong message because the message has been completely all over the place on masks from the government, to the extent that back in March, they were even banning advertising selling masks. So I agree totally. There needs to be a strong message either way. Encouraging is good, but compulsion is bad. I think that, it may not seem like much to have to wear a mask, but we have to remember that this comes in addition to all of the other infringements on our civil liberties that people have experienced over the past few months. There's never been so much, reduction in freedoms ever in any democratic society prior to this. And not only on top of that, you have the lockdown, which has caused the deepest recession in the history of capitalism. And now we're at a point where, the virus does seem to be in retreat. We want to start getting people back on the street, start getting people back to normal onto the high street, which has really, been suffering. And I worry that if you make things like this compulsory, it's going to put people off. It's actually, some people say they find masks reassuring, but I think in general, if you see large numbers of people, an abnormal number of people wearing masks, then people are actually going to be put off by that.
You don't think they'll find it reassuring to go shopping, for example? If everyone's wearing a mask, then they'll feel safe to do so.
I think that what it communicates is that things are still not normal, and that we are in, when in reality the virus is kind of happily in retreat. I would support mask wearing earlier on in the pandemic. Certainly.
Let's hear from Bharat. He says, hey, happily is not in retreat. Bharat, tell us more about what you make of this.
Look, the case numbers have come down, not because the virus has gone on holiday, but because of the lockdown measures we took. And once we start mingling with fellow human beings, the case numbers will go down. We want to keep the case numbers down. So come on, think about it. You are on a crowded train, cheek by jowl, close proximity, within 6 inches, sometimes 8 inches, a foot of each other. You need to wear a mask because one more item. There are many people, 80% of them, who are infected, infectious, without signs and symptoms. So we have this virus behaving in a peculiar way whereby you feel perfectly okay, but you are infecting other people. Plus, we want the economy to run. One way to get the economy to run, transport to run, is you protect yourself, whatever the level of protection, because masks are not absolute
But at the expense of civil liberties, though, Doctor. This is the problem, as Fraser says. Civil liberties have been infringed here.
Civil liberties, you either measure it on the scales with your civil liberties, or do you wish to continue to have number of cases and number of deaths? Which one would you rather have? Because United Kingdom, its record with 60,000 plus extra deaths is not something to be proud of. We need not have any more deaths than we can afford.
Last word from Fraser, then, please.
We need to do all we can.
Let's hear from Fraser.
Well, I think the European experience has shown that loosening the lockdown doesn't necessarily lead to an increase in cases or deaths. But I also think it's really important that we are able to kind of get this pandemic behind us. Our lives should not revolve around COVID forever. And at the moment, I don't think there's any need for that to be the case. Yes, let's have mask wearing in confined spaces, but not in general, not for all shops, not for every time you leave the house.